3 rings for the elven kings under the sky, 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone, 9 for mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne in the land of Mordor, where the shadows lie. 1 ring to rule them all, 1 ring to find them, 1 ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them in the land of Mordor, where the shadows lie.
Hail, Internet! It's Matt here for the Dorklords. Awesome to have you guys here on the stream. I was actually just informed, I believe, that Joe is feeling ill and is going to be unable to join us. I had the choice of we'll just put it off till later, or trying to wing this on my own. So bear with me. We're gonna forge ahead. That's right. Seems like I missed the last chapter. Frediger Goes South. You did, Mark. You missed Frediger Goes South. They really needed Frediger in this chapter, in fact, because today we're talking about the 4th chapter of Book 2 of the Fellowship of the Ring, entitled A Journey in the Dark. Quick summary. When last we left our fellowship, they had tried and failed to hike through the Redhorn Gate over Mount Carathrus. After debating their next move, it's decided that our heroes should travel through the ancient dwarven halls of Moria. Along the way, they are attacked by some particularly sinister wolves, which we'll talk about, and they are attacked again at the gates of Moria by the Watcher in the Water, which seals the gates behind them. Now, fully committed to their plan, they head for the eastern gates that open on the far side of the mountain. It's going to take a few days. Along the way, they find the tomb of Balin, proving his company met an untimely end. So yes, welcome again for those. Hey, Thomas, good to see you, good sir. For those of you just joining in here, it's I'm running solo. So doing a thing here. We're gonna make our best. Exactly, best wishes for Joe. Thank you, Shelby. She's saying best wishes for my show upcoming. Awesome. Yes. In fact, I was just commenting that I am my comedy group, the Stuntmen, are going to be doing a show for Pause Chicago in November at Second City. And so that's going to be a really, really special event. And we're going to have puppies on stage. And I've written a thing that's like an Armageddon style parody for them. Anyway, it's cool. Yeah, be awesome. All right. Normally, I would have Joe and Dan, our Canadian friends, basically go through in more detail the story kind of line by line. In this case, what I'm probably going to end up doing is jumping around with the things that really took me. There's a lot of lore in this particular chapter. In fact, I've got this might resonate with some people. I've got 26 open tabs on my phone where I've got wait, let me keep this up. Oh, right. Oh, Dairon, great. Oh, Kirth, got it. So yes, there's all kinds of cool lore to be had in this section. I think we're going to start then with kind of one of the early commentaries. Our group has failed. They are wondering what to do. Boromir says, hey, you know what? We should just go through the Gap of Rohan. And Gandalf's having none of it. No, we're not bringing this thing anywhere near Saruman. So no. Mark says, I'm sure Frediger can see in the dark. This chapter should be like a Sunday afternoon stroll in the park. Oh, and he even rhymed it. Well done, sir. Yes. So they are quickly scrap the idea of taking the ring through the Pass of Rohan. Gandalf realizes that their delay in crossing the mountain has kind of put a target on them, and they need to disappear for a while, which would be a handy little side effect of going through Moria. So he mentions he's been through Moria before. We'll talk about that in a second. And then we get this interesting quote, if I can find it, from Aragorn, where Aragorn says he has also been through Moria, but did not care for the experience. And so that particular passage where Aragorn is discussing having come into Moria from the east, the eastern gate, not the west, and then it was an experience that he wishes to forget. He basically this is a carryover from an earlier draft back to the day we've talked about this before, but back when Aragorn was Trotter, who was essentially a halfling ranger with wooden shoes, but not wooden shoes, because that's what gets revealed. Trotter, here's what we get from the Treason of Isengard. Treason of Isengard has a series of drafts of this first section. Actually, Tolkien probably rewrote the section up to Moria the most of any of the rest of the book. Obviously, it wasn't like word for word, one time, I'm done. But there are 4 or 5 drafts that even show up in the in this Treason of Isengard. So in one of those drafts, we get this remarks to say, in the remarks about Trotter here, the only point that has not appeared in notes already given us is that Trotter was captured in Moria. Trotter had tracked Gollum as he wandered southwards through Fangorn Forest and past the Dead Marshes until he had himself been caught and imprisoned by the Dark Lord. It is seen here that the story of Trotter's capture and torturing survived his change from hobbit to man. So yeah, we've got this situation where and it makes sense here too, right? Trotter came in from the east. He was in Fangorn Forest. He wants to pass the Dead Marshes, so that's all on the eastern side of the mountains. And then trying to find Gollum, he ends up getting caught and imprisoned in Moria. And then there's this extra bit there where Christopher Tolkien writes, "My father bracketed the passage from ever since I have worn shoes to hurt in some way, and wrote in the margin with a query that it should be revealed later that Trotter had wooden feet." So in other words, Trotter, yes, Trotter caught in Moria and his feet hewn off. That is exactly right, Thomas. Yeah, so the Nazgul tortured him by cutting off his feet, and that's just horrific. So anyway, that bit of text carries over to Aragorn saying, obviously Aragorn's feet are still his feet. They have not been chopped off. He's wearing clogs. So Aragorn still has this line because that line was in there originally for Trotter. Now, can you assign a reason why Aragorn might have come into Moria from the east at some point? Yes, you can think, but there's no reference to it. There's not like, oh, right, that time when he was in Lothlorien and he did a scouting mission. No, that's not written anywhere. So I do feel like this is an artifact from this earlier draft. And it's just it's a brutal outcome for Trotter / Aragorn. So we also then though have Gandalf mention, yeah, not a brilliant line of fiction. Well, I mean, it's grotesque. I mean, it jars the imagination. But yeah, the Mr. Wooden Feet. So Aragorn's already mentioned that. So then you have Gandalf mentioning that he also spent time in Moria. And I also feel like there's a little bit of a reference to the older drafts in what Gandalf says. So anyway, okay, here we go. Let me find it real fast. Okay. So Gandalf says, yet it will not be the first time that I have been to Moria. I sought there long for Thrain, son of Thror, after he was lost. I passed through, and I came out again alive. So there we have him saying, yes, he also came in from the east. He didn't come in through the western door, but he was looking for Thrain at that time. Now, ultimately, he finds Thrain imprisoned in Dol Guldur, and that's where he gets, the key. That's the relates it to the Hobbit. He gets the key to Erebor and the map and stuff like that. But what I'm thinking is, and this is just a theory, but I'm guessing that in the draft that featured the Nazgul imprisoning and torturing Trotter in Moria, they also imprisoned Thrain there. And so hence that's why Gandalf went to Moria thinking, oh, this is where enemies of Sauron get imprisoned. I'll go check there. Now, could Thrain have also wandered there on his own? He had reason to, yes. So it's not like a deal, it's not like a plot breaker or anything, but it is interesting that they had to write this extra thing of Gandalf went looking for Thrain. Thrain wasn't there. Then he found Thrain in Dol Guldur. It doesn't sound like a straight path. So anyway, just to say, Gandalf and Aragorn have both been to Moria, and I wonder if both of their visits were in earlier drafts and it's kind of left in there because you need to have Gandalf have been here before so he can help lead them out. So there's that. We then get really interesting attack by wolves, but not just any wolves. This is a really interesting bit because I don't know that we even get any. I mean, wolves are fairly prominent in The Hobbit. We get wolf attacks there. Not so much in The Lord of the Rings, but you get this big attack here as they head for Moria. Give me a moment. There's an implication that these wolves have been sent by Sauron. Pretty strong, more than implication, maybe. Like it's pretty much said out loud. But so you get this. Okay, so at a gap in the circle, a great dark wolf shape could be seen halted, gazing at them. A shuddering howl broke from him, as if he were a captain summoning his pack to the assault. And then you have Gandalf. Gandalf stood up and strode forward, holding his staff aloft. "Listen, hound of Sauron," he cried. "Gandalf is here. Fly if you value your foul skin. I will shrivel you from tail to snout if you come within this ring." Which this rebuke, in some ways, I mean, it seems similar to the rebuke he's gonna give to the Balrog coming up in the next chapter. It's like two powerful entities, giving their bona fides. But he does call it a hound of Sauron. Then you have the wolf snarled, sprang towards him with a great leap. At that moment, there was a sharp twang. Legolas had loosed his bow. There was a hideous yell, and the leaping shape thudded to the ground. The elvish arrow had pierced its throat. The watching eyes were suddenly extinguished. Then you get this interesting passage as they're still surrounded at their campfire. In the wavering firelight, Gandalf seemed suddenly to grow. He rose up, a great menacing shape like the monument of some ancient king of stone set upon a hill. Stooping like a cloud, he lifted a burning branch and strode to meet the wolves. They gave back before him. High in the air, he tossed the blazing brand. It flared with a sudden white radiance like lightning, and his voice rolled like thunder. "Nauron Edrath Amun, Naurdan in Gauroth," he cried. That is a Sindarin for fire save us, fire for the wolves. Keep that in mind. There was a roar and a crackle, and the tree above him burst into a leaf and bloom of blinding flame. The fire leapt from treetop to treetop. The whole hill was crowned with dazzling light. The swords and knives of the defenders shone and flickered. The last arrow of Legolas kindled in the air as it flew. I love that imagery. And plunged, burning into the heart of a great wolf chieftain. All the others fled. Now, this is the part that's like, oh, okay, these are very special. When the full light of the morning came, no signs of the wolves were to be found, and they looked in vain for the bodies of the dead. No trace of the fight remained, but the charred trees and the arrows of Legolas lying on the hilltop. All were undamaged, save one, of which only the point was left. And I can assume that's the one that caught fire as it was traveling through Gandalf's spell, essentially. Gandalf says, "It is as I feared. These were no ordinary wolves hunting for food in the wilderness. Let us eat quickly and go." So there is, there's some mystery as to what these wolves exactly represent. However, it seems pretty obvious they are spiritual beings, maybe similar to the Barrow Wights in that way, because they disappear in daylight. So they're not even simply wargs, because wargs and wolves are maybe even the same, different terms for the same creature. These are essentially evil spirits in wolf form. And that conjures up a lot of imagery for Sauron from the Silmarillion. In fact, one of those little lines from the spell that Sauron casts, where he says, "Now Erdan in Galroth." Galroth is werewolf, and Tol in Galroth was the Isle of Werewolves. Exactly, Shelby. Werewolves. I think I even got a little picture of the Isle of Werewolves in here. There we go. Alan Lee. So Sauron was synonymous with the Isle of Werewolves. In fact, turned into one himself to fight Huon. He lost that fight. But to have these spectral wolves and being called the Hound of Sauron, I think there's a big link there, obviously, that these are very special wolves sent for a purpose. And that purpose is to stop the Fellowship. Sounds like the Fellowship, Gandalf mentions, hey, I think time's a chicken because we've been taking too long to try to get over Caradhras. We need to get out of sight for a while. Part of that reasoning is well-founded here because the wolves have attacked. And so, yeah, anyway, I kind of like that. That's a bit of imagery that I didn't realize for a long time until I read the Silmarillion. I read the Lord of the Rings way before I read the Silmarillion. And so there's always those tie-ins where you're like, oh, awesome. Never would have gotten that just from a basic reading, but good stuff. Actually, hey, looks like I've got, I might have one of the brothers in. Dan!
Hey!
Good to see you, sir.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm catching you here as you're walking through the house. I get it.
Yeah, I'm trying to find a good place for myself.
Okay. All right. Well, you do that. You take your time. Set up. I'll keep chatting. And when you're ready, we can we can chat. We can discuss away, good sir. You can tell us about if Joe's. Oh, there's a different Joe. They're wolves. Igor. Okay. So we have the wolf situation. We then, I guess the next big thing is they approach the door. And there's a lot of things going on here where, first of all, there's the imagery on the door, which is very important. So let me find that. Okay. So yeah, the gates. Okay. So what does the writing say? Asked Frodo, who was trying to decipher the inscription on the arch. I thought I knew elf letters, but I cannot read these. The words are in the elven tongue of the west of Middle-earth in the elder days, answered Gandalf. But they do not say anything of importance to us. They say only, the doors of Durin, Lord of Moria. Speak, friend, and enter. And underneath, small and faint, is written, I, Narvi, made them. Celebrimbor of Holland drew these signs. He, Gandalf, stepped up to the rock again and lightly touched with his staff the silver star in the middle beneath the sign of the anvil. Anon Ethelen Edroiamen, Fenas Nogothrum Lastobeth Lamen. Translated, Elvish gate, open for us now. Doorway of the dwarf folk, listen to the word of my tongue. Which is a very literal password notion. I'll say that. I mean, I would have, started with like birth dates or password, password backwards. But you know who would have figured out the password? I'm sure Mark would tell us. Frediger. You mean, actually, you even wrote a Frediger-based thing. You mean Frediger and enter? Yeah. Yes, exactly. Interesting that when you say speak friend and enter out loud, it doesn't work. So you have to say it, I guess, by itself. But the door has these different symbols. So it has the writing. It's got the C, a C for Celebrimbor. I think I have actually Tolkien's own drawing of it somewhere around here. There it is. So so you can see up there, you've got the writing that I just read. You've got the 7 stars over a crown. That crown is over an anvil. You got 2 trees, and it mentions that the 2 trees bear a crescent moon. You've also got then at the very bottom a little script, which is the D for Durin. And then you've got that right in the middle, this lone star. That lone star is the star for the house of Feanor. And it's one of the few times, it's not the only time, but it's one of, I would say, less than 5 times that the name Feanor even comes up in the Lord of the Rings. Obviously, Feanor, incredibly important character, but in the context of Lord of the Rings, he just gets referenced a few times. This is one of those big references. Why? Because Celebrimbor is his grandson. And so he was honoring the house of Feanor. One of the things that I found interesting is what the 2 trees represent. Now, immediately for me, I think the trees of Valinor, Laurelin and Telperion. However, I don't think that's right. First, we're told each of the trees bears a crescent moon. Laurelin was a tree that gave off a golden light, kind of a precursor to the sun, and Telperion gave off a white light similar to the moon. And then note that Legolas says, there is the tree of the High Elves, not the trees, plural. He's talking about the tree. I think he's referring to the tree that was made by the Valar in the image of Telperion, hence like moonlight. And it was placed in the great square of Tirion, which was the city of the High Elves, tree of the High Elves. That tree was it's hard to say, Galathilion. And so the crescent moons were referred to as representation of Telperion. So I think it's just Galathilion, maybe repeated twice. The anvil and the hammer surrounded by the crown with the 7 stars are described as emblems of Durin. And I guess while I'm at that, I will just we'll skip to Durin's song because there's some relevance there. At one point later in this chapter, Gimli does a poem, and that poem is about Durin, the original Durin, Durin the Deathless, the first Durin, and his finding and establishing Moria as a kingdom. And so I'm not going to read the whole poem, but I'm going to read basically the beginning and the ending, the first passage and the last passage. It says, the world was young, the mountains green, no stain yet on the moon was seen. No words were laid on stream or stone when Durin woke and walked alone. He named the nameless hills and dells. He drank from yet untasted wells. He stooped and looked in Miramir and saw a crown of stars appear as gems upon a silver thread above the shadow of his head. Then the last passage, The world is gray, the mountains old. The forge's fire is ashen cold. No harp is rung, no hammer falls. The darkness dwells in Durin's halls. The shadow lies upon his tomb in Moria, in Khazad-dûm. But still, the sunken stars appear in dark and windless Mirrormere. There lies his crown in water deep, till Durin wakes again from sleep. So we get the fact that the myth is that Durin wandered around Middle Earth till he gazed into the pool of the Mirror, which we get in the next chapter. It's on the eastern side of Moria. And he saw a constellation of 7 stars reflected over his head in the water like a crown. And thus he decided that was an omen and this should be the home of his people. And that's why there's 7 stars over Durin's crown on the gates of Moria. And I can't help but mention that without then going into the fact that 7 stars get repeated a lot with all of the races. In fact, dwarves, elves, and humans all have their own version of 7 stars. And in the case of the elves, it might come from the exact same origin. The elves have the constellation, the Valasirka, the sickle of the Valar, which is AKA the Big Dipper, which also has 7 stars in it. It holds sacred meaning for the elves. It was set in the sky by their patron, Varda, as a challenge to Morgoth. It's not stated that it's the same constellation as Durin's crown, but it does feel like it is. Good point. You got the 7 sisters, the Pleiades. Nice call, Joe. That could be. You're right. Maybe there are others. There are certainly other constellations of 7 stars. It just seems very coincidental that both the dwarves and the elves have this affinity, homage to this sacred constellation, whichever of the 1 or 2 we're talking about. And then for Gondor, 7 stars appear on their banners as well. Now, these supposedly represent the 7 ships that carried the 7 Palantiri that Elendil took from the downfall of Numenor. 9 ships in total, but the 7 ships carrying the Palantiri all had star emblems on their sails. And from that, you get that poem. It's not in this chapter, but you get the tall ships and tall kings, 3 times 3, 9 ships. What brought them from the foundering land over the flowing sea? 7 stars and 7 stones and 1 white tree. Which I'll add another tree motif. In fact, that tree that's being mentioned, that's Nimloth, which was in Numenor. That Nimloth was a seedling made from Galathilion, which is the tree, as we're saying, is most likely represented by the gates of Moria. So you see these intertwining, motifs in, maybe also showing that while these cultures are obviously distinct and very different, there are these similarities that even maybe unknown to them all bind them in a way, not through the One Ring. But anyway, Dan, what are you have some thoughts there on either the Song of Durin or the gates of Moria?
Of course, I really do like a lot of the tree motifs. A lot of the and I could tell that not only that there's a lot of Celtic aspects to it, and
Great point.
And looking at the image as well that I do have in the book,
Yep.
it's one look would think that it's leading into a very celestial plane, but beyond that, I could tell that it's not that simple.
I got you. Yeah.
And
Yeah, there's just a lot of meaning contained in all these symbology, but on its face too, it could just be, oh, that's a pleasant artwork on a door.
But of course, when you're dealing in fantasy, may look nice on the door, but something like that is far more important and says a lot more.
It
Be it
does.
of an ancient family, be it of a doorway, being of anything. And since we're dealing with Moria, that's not something you look without considering potential trouble beyond.
Agreed.
And
Oh yeah, go ahead.
as for the song, of course, there's a certain beauty to it, but as I've noticed with all the other songs, there's underlying meaning to it that isn't as simple as that. It's ominous, I find, in absolute beauty.
And it does have this chronology to it, right? So it starts with the world was young, it ends with the world is gray. So there's that sense of the time passing and things getting worse. They're not as they were.
Mm-hmm. And it's as if Gimli is foretelling the history of the world.
Yeah, it's certainly from a dwarf's point of view.
Mm-hmm. And even as far as the future, like the beginning and the end of the world, and you don't
And
see.
it's referencing the Balrog, obviously, and the fact that it was the end of their world. That was the end of at the time anyway. During that particular Durin's reign, it was Moria was shut down for many years. So it was an end of things in that way.
Mm-hmm. It's because I know Joe and I were reading the Silmarillion.
Yep.
And learning a bit about the history. That seems to be something that's consistent with a lot of the Lord of the Rings mythos. And
I got you. All right. Well, let's move on. They're right here at the door. Actually, I got another picture of the door. Okay, Gandalf cleverly figures out that password. They need a better password protection. Is all I'm saying. You put an exclamation point in there, a couple of caps, couple of lowercase, and you don't put the password right on the front. It's like you took a sticky tape and put it right on the front of the thing you're trying to protect. But in any case,
they could have used the password 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
They could, yes, they could have. So it's figured out. The door is being opened, and then we get this Watcher in the water. And the Watcher in the water, this particular scene, obviously very evocative. It's something a lot of people remember from the books. And it's got, there's a little bit of questionable motives, and how did the Watcher get there? And we can talk about that. So one of the things I wonder about after reading the passage, I've got a couple of quotes from it here. First of all, let me take it back just a bit as they're coming up to the gates. When they reached the top, they saw they could go no further that way, and the reason for the drying up of the gate stream was revealed. The Serannon had been dammed and was filled all the valley. That's important, I think. Then you get, many coiling arms seized the doors on either side, and with horrible strength swung them round. With a shattering echo they slammed, and all light was lost. A noise of rending and crashing came dully through the ponderous stone. We then get Gandalf commenting on it. Well, well, said the wizard. The passage is blocked behind us now, and there is only one way out on the other side of the mountains. I fear from the sounds that boulders have been piled up and the trees uprooted and thrown across the gate. I am sorry, for the trees were beautiful and had stood so long. Those are the holly trees that mark. It's kind of like you have an invisible door, but you frame it with two trees. But I get it. The door is invisible, even you can't see it on the surface of the stone. But just to say, those are the trees that have been uprooted and piled up with the boulders behind the door. By what? The Watcher, obviously. Then Frodo asked Gandalf, like, what was that? Gandalf says, I do not know, but the arms were all guided by one purpose. Something has crept or has been driven out of dark waters under the mountains. And then the awesome line, there are older and fouler things than orcs in the deep places of the world. Like, yeah, there we go. Boom. So I feel like that is more than strongly hinting, and maybe again, it's a beat you over the head, that this thing is not just a random chance. The fact that it's not just that the Watcher in the Water tries to grab Frodo, that's suspicious enough. But then the fact that once they get in, it closes the doors behind them. Like, okay, why would, if it was just a mindless creature, trying to get food, it wouldn't go to the trouble of closing the doors and then piling up, ripping out trees and piling the stuff up around them. Now, maybe you could say, oh, it realized there was the ring and it was scared of the ring, and so it wanted to put a barrier between itself and the ring. That's possible, but I feel like more to the point, the fact that Gandalf says that perhaps this thing was driven out of dark waters. Then you get the fact that the Serannon has been dammed up, and that's very recent because Gandalf didn't even know that when they're walking up. He's like, "Oh, what happened to the stream? Oh, well, okay." Fairly recent development. We know in the next chapter when they're reading the book of Mazarbul that the water has been dammed at that point as well. So it feels like the orcs dammed the river to create a lake on that would go right up to the edge of the western gates, and somehow they ended up I think they populated that lake with the Watcher in the Water to be a guardian. And in fact it kills Owen, one of our dwarves from the Hobbit, as we'll find out in the next chapter. Just as a further proof that perhaps this creature, now, is it trained or anything? No, probably not. It's probably similar to Shelob, right? Shelob later on is guarding the paths, and Sauron is perfectly fine to have Shelob wandering around picking things off for him. I think similarly here, they've positioned and dammed up the river to position the Watcher in the Water to guard the western gate. And you get this again. Remember, I mentioned the treaty of Isengard, the treason of Isengard. Again, in one of the drafts, we get this line, and it says, the whole, we cannot get out. We cannot get out. The pool is up to the wall in the west. There lies the Watcher in the Water. It took Owen. We cannot get out. They have taken the gates. And we get this line. It was perhaps well for us that the water had sunk somewhat, and that the Watcher was guarding that the Watcher was guarding the dwarf door, not the elf door we came by. And so I do feel like, there's obviously that's not in the final text, but that is suggesting that the Watcher is a guardian and not simply random critter hanging out in the waters outside. Joe's asking, is Owen pronounced like Owen? I think so. I believe Owen is the proper pronunciation of that. If other people have other thoughts on that, feel free to weigh in. Why did the Watcher go right for the ring bearer? All evil things drawn to the power of the ring, right? Right. I mean, I do feel like there is a bit of that, but I do feel like it does have this purpose, and whether it's whether it's literally watching for the ring bearer, obviously it takes out the dwarves. But yeah, I think evil things drawn to the power of the ring. It reminds me of when Isildur is trying to take the ring through the Gladden Fields, and it seemingly draws in this roving little army of orcs toward him. So yes, I think there is a evil things drawn to the power of the ring motif there as well. Yeah. Anyway, so I just feel like there's a little bit of organization there. I'll say, that the fact that the river was dammed up, I think, is an intentional thing from the orcs. Any thoughts you've got there, Dan, on the Watcher in the water?
It is very fascinating because time and time again, a door closing in a fictional setting to me often means that there's a matter of, I think the best way I could describe it, a matter of destiny, divine providence, meant to that the heroes need to go forward, and there's no turning back. And
I definitely agree. This is one of those quest moments where, forces beyond our control have forced us to commit to this choice we've made. Okay, we can't second think this. We have to now sally forth.
And for the doors to close, and then suddenly the heroes find themselves with the Watcher in a very dark place. That tells us a bit of the stakes. And if that's the beginning of the journey, if the Watcher is just the beginning, what lies beyond?
Right. It suggests there are further perils, of which there will be, for sure.
When it comes to storytelling, there is usually something more to it.
Yeah, and in fact, the next chapter, I mean, the Bridge of Khazad-dûm, that is the chapter that really hooked me as a 12-year-old kid into the Lord of the Rings, admittedly. Like that, I still remember, I think I mentioned this the last time we were talking, but I was the really good buddy of mine who was also 12. We were in junior high together, and he was drawing the Bridge at Khazad-dûm on his notebook. And I asked him what he was drawing. He's like, "Oh yeah, no, this is the Bridge at Khazad-dûm, Gandalf and the Balrog." And I had been reading Lord of the Rings, but slowly, and I hadn't gotten to that chapter yet. And so I went home, and that day I just skipped up to Bridge at Khazad-dûm because it sounded so cool, and it was. And from then on, now I've read it many times over. But that's the hook for the 12-year-old. Is this danger to come, the Balrog. But yeah, this place is obviously full of perils. And so to ease the minds of our fellowship, Aragorn mentions, he's talking about how, look, Gandalf is going to find his way out of here. In fact, he even references, he kind of foreshadows the fall of Gandalf by saying, like, no matter what it costs, we'll see the other side. And so as a way of proving that, he mentions this line. He says, Gandalf, is surer of finding the way home in a blind night than the cats of Queen Baruthio. And that line just hangs there, and we never hear about Queen Baruthiel again. And it's a really interesting little bit. So, and probably most people on this stream maybe know all about this already, but just for posterity's sake, can't just let that line go without giving the backstory to it. So, in one of Tolkien's letters, I think he even references it twice, but essentially in one of his letters, he is asked about basically the lore in the backstory to all of the events that happen in Lord of the Rings. And he responds, he says, my chief reason for talking so is to say that, of course, all these things are more or less written. There is hardly any reference in the Lord of the Rings to things that do not actually exist on its own plane of secondary or sub-creational reality. That is to say, have been written. But then he goes on to say, the cats of Queen Baruthiel and the names and adventures of the other two wizards, 5 minus Saruman, Gandalf, Radagast, are all that I recollect. And of course, he's talking about the blue wizards, which he goes on to actually write fairly good detail about both Baruthiel and the blue wizards. But those are at the time, those are the two things he's like, everything in Lord of the Rings is referenced in my head, and I have notes about it with two exceptions. And one of them is Queen Baruthiel. So, in the Unfinished Tales, Christopher Tolkien writes, even the story of Queen Baruthiel does exist. However, if only in a very primitive outline. In one part, illegible. She was the nefarious, solitary, and loveless wife of Taranon, 12th king of Gondor. Third age, 830 to 913. And first of the Ship Kings, who took the crown in the name of Falastur, Lord of the Coasts, and was the first childless king. Baruthiel lived in the king's house in Osgiliath, hating the sounds and smells of the sea and the house that Taranon built below Pelargir. She hated all making, all colors, and elaborate adornment, wearing only black and silver. Here, I'm gonna get. I've got a artist rendering of Baruthiel there. And living in bare chambers, and the gardens of the house in Osgiliath were filled with tormented sculptures beneath cypresses and yews. She had 9 black cats and 1 white, her slaves, with whom she conversed or read their memories, setting them to discover all the secrets of Gondor, so that she knew those things that men wish most to keep hidden, setting the white cat to spy upon the black and tormenting them. No man in Gondor dared touch them. All were afraid of them and cursed when they saw them pass. What follows is almost wholly illegible in the unique manuscript, except for the ending, which states that her name was erased from the Book of Kings. But the memory of men is not wholly shut in books, and the cats of Queen Baruthiel never passed wholly out of men's speech. And that King Taranon had her set on a ship alone with her cats and set adrift on the sea before a north wind. The ship was last seen flying past Umbar under a sickle moon, with a cat at the masthead and another as a figurehead on the prow. Boom. Well, there you go. This is, I guess, this is probably Baruthiel heading for a boat to be cast away, to be exiled. But yeah, that is the story of Baruthiel and her cats, which is also, I think, other than we get like way back in the day, early drafts of things, Saruman was a cat, Tevildo. We don't get a lot of cats, which I would prefer to have some cats in there, but the only cats we get are these, which seem to be essentially abused, not cool. But yes, Queen Baruthiel, a villain, one would say, but gets referenced by Aragorn here in the Dark of Moria. Okay. Something I did notice going back to the Watcher, Boromir, you can argue whether what sets off the Watcher, but certainly at least part of what sets off the Watcher is that Boromir throws a rock into the water, and then there's these ripples. Did you wake it up? Yeah, okay, great point, Mark. I totally agree. As a person who likes cats more than dogs, this is a point I really do not like about Tolkien's writing. It does feel like he's got something against cats, right? I mean, that's what it feels like to me. But anyway, I mean, Huon, the Hound of Valinor, is like this paragon of dogs, but we do not get a similar paragon of cats. But okay, so Boromir throws this rock into the water and arouses the Watcher. Well, later in this chapter, we get that great, Pippin throwing a stone into the well. I think I got a picture of the well up here. There we go. And then setting off like a series of taps, and obviously there's some responding sounds in the background. And so you got in both cases, it seems that Boromir and Pippin in this chapter both gain the attention of enemies by throwing stones. So it's just like stay focused, stay on target, throw yourself in next time, as Gandalf would say. This is like a little haha, but back to just jumping back real fast to when they hear the wolves howling and they're worried that the wolves are going to attack. You get this thing. It's not quite the level of Finrod versus Sauron with their song duel, essentially, but you get Boromir and Aragorn participate in like a little mini rap duel. So Boromir starts off. She says, "Then let us start as soon as it is light tomorrow, if we can," said Boromir. "The wolf that one hears is worse than the orc that one fears." And then Aragorn responds, "True," said Aragorn, loosening his sword in its sheath. "But where the warg howls, there also the orc prowls." He's throwing down the gauntlet. Anyways, it's that's an interesting little bit there where they're giving each other a little, back and forth there, with some rhymes about orcs riding wolves. So now they're inside. Oh, big thing happens though during this moment. So when they shut the doors and the Watcher in the water is on the outside, what else is on the outside? Bill the pony. And so it's a really, anyway, they do a lot here with Bill, and it's Bill and Sam. In fact, before the Watcher comes along, they've already decided Bill shouldn't go along with us into Moria. First of all, he probably won't go in, although Sam is convinced he will. So Gandalf is talking to Sam, says, "I'm sorry, Sam, but when the door opens, I do not think you'll be able to drag your Bill inside into the long dark of Moria. You will have to choose between Bill and your master." And so there's this, it does feel like an actual choice that Sam has to make. And obviously he makes the one to stay with Frodo, but he's leaving this creature that he cares and is a lot of empathy for, out in incredible danger. It continues. "He'd follow Mr. Frodo into a dragon's den if I let him," protested Sam. "It'd be nothing short of murder to turn him loose with all these wolves about." Then Gandalf responds, trying to ease this moment. "It will be short of murder, I hope," said Gandalf. He laid his hand on the pony's head and spoke in a low voice. "Go with words of guard and guiding on you," he said. "You are a wise beast and have learned much in Rivendell. Make your ways to places where you can find grass, and so come in time to Elrond's house or wherever you wish to go. There, Sam, he will have quite as much a chance of escaping wolves and getting home as we have." So there's a sense that Gandalf maybe gives him some kind of a protective spell, if you want to call it that. And inevitably, Bill is a super pony, because he survives. He gets back to Bree. he gets back. Like he's it's nothing short of amazing. Bill is like the equine Frediger, Mark, for you there, because there should be zero chance that they ever got to reconnect with Bill again, but they do. They definitely do. Another quick line that a thing I was going to mention about the wolves' attack, since we're talking about the wolves. When Gandalf does essentially, like, it seems like he's casting a spell that's like he said he as I mentioned, the verbiage is, hold on, where did that go? Da, da, da. He says something like "Fire protect us," and then flames shoot up and take out the our spiritual wolves. Well, that certainly, we don't get the idea that Gandalf casts a lot of spells per se, but it does feel like Narya, the Ring of Fire, is somehow enhancing this moment of summoning fire to protect them. So, most of the time we hear of Narya as something that kindles people's hearts, and you use it gives you essentially like a charisma bonus. But I do wonder if there's actually here's like a physical manifestation of literal fire that he is conjuring through the use of Narya. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Dan.
There's a very we do see the Catholic element from Tolkien's beliefs, because 3 days after his death, there's a resurrection. He appears, and then there's the fire of what's it called? Enlightenment that comes forward. Where in a lot of pictures and in the Bible, it's described as flames above their heads, and there is this element right here.
Yeah, the sacred flame, in fact,
Yeah.
something, the Iluvatar, yeah.
And
yep.
And it's there to guide the apostles, and Gandalf is guiding these this ragtag bunch, the Fellowship, and well, yes, the Holy Spirit, and eventually,
Well noted,
yeah, and spoilers, Gandalf can't join them the entire way, so they have to find their way.
And they do it. Great point. Great point.
It isn't easy.
It certainly is not easy. As you mentioned, you start, if the start of this quest in some ways is this, being chased by the Watcher into this path of darkness. It gets a lot more perilous as they go forward. I'm gonna jump forward just a little bit here, kind of basically to the end of the chapter, where we get this line. They find the tomb. We're not going to talk so much about the tomb of Balin in this one, because they're going to spend a lot of time with the tomb of Balin in the next chapter. So we'll cover the tomb itself and the book, the journal, and everything in the next one. But they do at least find it, and they say, it's an interesting little line here. Again, this is almost like a little throwaway line, kind of like mentioning Feanor. Like, oh, that's the star of the House of Feanor. Okay, what does that mean? So these are Dairon's runes. They're talking about the runes written on the tomb. These are Dairon's runes, such as were used of old in Moria, said Gandalf. Here is written in the tongues of men and dwarves, Balin, son of Fundin, Lord of Moria. So they just kind of casually toss off this Dairon's, like, who is Dairon, and okay, what was he? You would get from that, if you didn't know anything else, that Dairon was perhaps a dwarf in Moria, used of old in Moria. But you can get info on Dairon from the Silmarillion. So Dairon was a lore master and musician in the court of King Thingol back in the First Age. he had his big part in the story is that he had this unrequited love for Luthien and became jealous of her relationship with Beren, and he betrays their confidence to King Thingol, I think maybe multiple times. So he's kind of the bad guy in the story. But he also he creates written language. And it's interesting because we get two different versions of how Moria ended up using Dairon's runes. So from the appendices, which is probably more canonical, we get the appendices and the Silmarillion. Each have their own version. But the appendices are probably more canonically accurate, but I don't know. The Silmarillion carries weight. So I'll read these out for you, and then you can be the judge. In the appendices, you get this. Okay. But in Beleriand, before the end of the First Age, the Kirth, this is this language, partly under the influence of the Tengwar of the Noldor, were rearranged and further developed. Their richest and most ordered form was known as the alphabet of Dairon, since in Elvish tradition, it was said to have been devised by Dairon, the minstrel and lore master of King Thingol of Doriath. Among the Eldar, the alphabet of Dairon did not develop true cursive forms, since for writing, the elves adopted the Feanorian letters. The elves of the West, indeed, for the most part, gave up the use of runes altogether. In the country of Eregion, however, the alphabet of Dairon was maintained in use and passed thence to Moria, where it became the alphabet most favored by the dwarves. It remained ever after in use among them and passed with them to the north. Hence, in later times, it was often called Angerthas Moria, or the long rune rows of Moria. As with their speech, the dwarves made use of such scripts as were current, and many wrote the Feanorian letters skillfully. But for their own tongue, they adhered to the Kirth and developed written pen forms from them. So what this is saying is, in fact, the elves at that time, the Sindarin elves hanging out in Doriath, didn't have, they said they gave up the use of runes altogether. So they weren't really that interested in writing things down in that moment. Those particular elves, now high elves, very interested in writing things down. But so then it says in the country of Eregion, this alphabet was maintained, and then it was passed along to Moria. Keep that in mind just for a second. I'm going to read you the other version of how these runes got to Moria, and then we can talk about the differences. So in the Silmarillion, it says, in those days, it is said, Dairon the minstrel, chief lore master of the kingdom of Thingol, devised his runes, and the Naugrim that came to Thingol learned them, those would be the dwarves from Belegost and Naugrod, and were well pleased with the device, esteeming Dairon's skill higher than did the Sindar, his own people. By the Naugrim, the Kirth were taken east over the mountains and passed into the knowledge of many peoples, but they were little used by the Sindar for the keeping of records until the days of the war, and much that was held in memory perished in the ruins of Doriath. Okay, so in both scenarios, Dairon's own people, the Sindar elves, are like, yeah, whatever, written language, blah, blah, blah. But here in the Silmarillion, you've got the situation where in the appendices, the Sindar elves reject the runes. It says they're maintained in the country of Eregion and passed on to the dwarves of Moria. But that's a big time gap between the court of Thingol and the establishing of Eregion. We know that Celebrimbor lived in Finrod's kingdom in Nargothrond at the time in the First Age. Galadriel made trips between the two realms. It's possible Celebrimbor and Nargothrond learned of Dairon's runes, perhaps through Galadriel, then brought them to Eregion, and ultimately passed them on to the dwarves of Moria as like a gesture of goodwill. That's possible. But I would say the Silmarillion version seems more direct. The dwarves that were visiting Thingol's court from Belegost and Naugrod, they learned the runes, they liked them, they brought them east. So to me, the Silmarillion version makes more sense, but in the spirit of the relationship between Eregion and Moria being like this kind of not unique per se, but almost, especially for its time, unique relationship between dwarves and elves, maybe that's hinting that part of it was, hey, here's a written language we think you will appreciate, and we can put it on this door, and we can put, anyway. So anyway, just to say, I don't know, springing that on you, Dan, but any thoughts there on this written language and it being inspired by this elf back in the First Age?
It is an impressive tale, and I agree with you. The Silmarillion is a lot more direct on the topic. It is funny because in the Silmarillion, me and Joe just got to Beren and Luthien. So.
Oh, I see. Okay, so you're right at the Dairon part right now. In fact.
Yeah.
Good evening,
yeah.
Robert.
And the fact that the Sindarin are more like, yeah, here it is, whatever, about written language. People don't appreciate one's own language written, especially that which is written. That'd be Joe that just got in.
Nothing wrong with dogs. Who on? We were just talking dogs and cats. Mr. Pickles, aka Pippin, is I think lounging nearby.
Mhm.
Anyway,
because the dwarves deciding, okay, the written language, we're going to hold it in high regard because this opens up our world to a lot more. Because sure, when you sing the ABCs, it's like a child's nursery rhyme. People think, oh, this is second nature, but there is power in words.
Power in written language for sure. It's a right. It's a technological leap forward for So so if it was given as a gift, that's as we're about to see in another context, a kingly gift. But yeah, no, it's pretty incredible.
Even the word Lord of the Rings, there's power in that. Because the rings we know are of magical element, and the Lord means that there is someone who controls these powerful artifacts. Just that.
Well, and in that context, we also get a reference to I'm forgetting exactly where it is. I think it might be in talking about Balin's tomb, but that there were things that were talked about in the secret language of the dwarves, Kuzdul. And Kuzdul is a really interesting, we know a few words in Kuzdul. Khazad-dûm is a Kuzdul word. But for the most part, dwarves use a more common form of speech, and they even the reference Balin's tomb does not have Balin's own name written on it in the secret language of the dwarves, because it's so secret they can't publicly carve it onto a tomb. So yeah, Kuzdul is a very, very secretive language, and we only know certain phrases from it. I found this from the Peoples of Middle Earth. Welcome, Joe, by the way.
All right.
Good to see you. The brothers.
Finally
are
here.
you
Sorry about
reunited?
that.
No worries. No worries. I did my best, but it's good to have you here. We've been kind of jumping around a little bit, but so we've kind of gotten to the end, and we're coming back around. So we covered the wolves, we've covered the Watcher, we've covered the Tomb of Balin.
You go on about.
Okay, yeah. So what was the Kuzdul version of Felagund again? That could I'm not familiar with that, Mark. But I'll show you what I am familiar with. We've got from the peoples of Middle-earth, we get this reference. Feanor's sons were too occupied in war and feuds to pay attention to such matters, save Maglor, who was a poet, and Curufin, his fourth and favorite son, that's later revised to be his fifth son, who is the father of Celebrimbor, to whom he gave his own name. But Curufin was most interested in the alien language of the dwarves, being the only one of the Noldor to win their friendship. It was from him that the lore masters obtained such knowledge as they could of the Khazad. And so you get, there's certain phrases, obviously Khazad in Khazad means dwarves mansion. You get there's a war cry that we are familiar with. Barak Khazad, Khazad Amenu, meaning axes of the dwarves are upon you. And then we get, there was a king of the dwarves, of Belagost, who was basically crushed to death by Glaurung during the Battle of Unnumbered Tears. And we know his Khazad name, Azagal. So it's secretive. Gimli has a secret name, and no, it's never said. We don't know it, but he goes by Gimli. And when he dies, they'd be put on his tomb Gimli. They're not going to put the secret name there. That's how secret it is. So it's just interesting. I'll say that while I'm thinking about it. I don't know if it's a mistake on Tolkien's part, or if there's like there's like an in-universe explanation for it, I'm sure. But on the doors of Moria, which Joe we have already discussed, but I'm coming back around to it. So this will be a chance if you have something you want to mention about it, you can. It mentions the word Moria, right? So it's like, hey, what does it say? These are the doors of Durin, Lord of Moria, speak, friend, and enter. Well, Moria is essentially an elven insult for Khazad.
And they have the Star of Feanor.
Black Pit. They do. We talked about that.
Does show, it's a nod to the old bond.
Correct. And of course, with Celebrimbor being of the House of Feanor. But I found it interesting that in that moment with the Khazad, that the elf that made the most contact with the dwarves to learn their language was Celebrimbor's dad. That's pretty cool. But just to say, if indeed Moria is an insult,
and the bond was passed down from father to son.
Correct. But so if Moria is an insult, it seems odd that it would then be put on the door as a sign of friendship with the dwarves. So my in-universe reason for that is
one thing I want to note about.
Can you hear me, Joe? Are you able to hear me, Joe?
You're cutting
Joe's having trouble hearing us. I'm going to finish up my thought real fast, and then I'll turn it over to Joe. Just to say, Moria, perhaps, obviously, it began as an insult. I think that's unquestionable. The elves called it the Black Pit, and that was their, boo for the mines. I think maybe because it was in vogue for so long, it was used so many times that over time it just became like the origin of the word maybe got lost, and it just became like, oh, right, that's Moria. That's what that is. And so the dwarves were willing to overlook it in the carving on their door. Otherwise, it does feel like a bit of a slight to put, this curse word, not a curse word, but the Black Pit of Durin. Great. Anyway, I don't know if you guys have thoughts on why the word Moria might have been carved onto the door, even though it's technically an insulting phrase to use.
Well, maybe it's a case of it's insulting to use, but you might as well own it.
Right. I get that.
But one thing about Gimli I just wanted to comment is that he's noted as having or a fire in his eyes. Let me find the exact page and part. It's a description that was used once upon a time with Othin, the allfather of the Norse gods.
Okay.
But what's more,
If you need a moment to find it, I can give you that moment. Oh, I think he went off. Okay. He's having some connection issues. I get it. You know, we're this is magic. We are speaking through Palantiri from thousands of miles away. One of the other things that this chapter brings up is Mithril, obviously. So Sam asks,
okay, so
what do the dwarves want to come back
Just-
for? Oh, sure.
since my computer seems to be on the fritz today, Gimli is described as having smoldering, fiery eyes at the mention of the mines of Moria, which itself is a nod to Othin from Norse mythology, and it's also a great nod to, well, Gimli's own desire to see Moria, because I imagine, you know, he was supposed to be part of the company of Thorin, but he couldn't make it. So basically, this is his second chance at
Okay.
an adventure, a bit of redemption. But we have to bear in mind that Gimli is basically supposed to. He's going. He's the same character as going. So you know, like there's going to be that sense of duty and obligation and honor in the character. I'm just going to go quickly check to see if my computer's working. Yeah, Dan could re-plug in his headset.
Yeah. I
Well,
plugged it in to avoid accidental echo, even though we're in two different rooms next to each other with,
I got
with doors.
Good call. But speaking of Gimli, so Gimli gives that line when they're talking about Mithril and how Sauron covets it and such. And then, you know, Gandalf mentions that, oh, right, there was a corselet of Moria silver that, you know, Bilbo gave or was given to Bilbo. And so Gimli says, a corselet of Moria silver? That was a kingly gift. Yes, said Gandalf, I never told him, but its worth was greater than the value of the whole Shire and everything in it. And of course, at least superficially, they don't know that that Frodo is actually wearing that corset at that moment. Now, maybe Gandalf does, but I got a picture of that somewhere. I think there it is. Ding. So yeah. Anyway, that's interesting lore that we get from that too. You know, Mithril is an elvish name. The dwarves have a name which they do not tell. So there's that Khuzdul coming back into play. They have a Khuzdul word for Mithril.
Because they're too Khuzdul to tell for anything.
That's right. They're too Khuzdul for school.
Cool.
The dwarves tell no tale, but even as Mithril was the foundation of their wealth, so also it was their destruction. And the great line here, they delved too greedily and too deep, and disturbed that from which they fled, Durin's bane. Of what they brought to light, the orcs have already nearly all, and given it to tribute to Sauron, who covets it. Just real fast, it just reminds me, they delved too greedily and too deep. Just, it's used so much in common parlance. It was used actually in one of the shows, one of the sci-fi shows that I cover on the Dorklords, the Lazarus Project. It's a time travel style sci-fi show, but they talk about the scientists doing too much work with time travel, and they reference, well, they delved too greedily and too deep, and it just left there. It's not like, oh, you know, like they say in Lord of the Rings, well, whatever. So it's just kind of a fun. It's it's in common parlance so much that it's become this little nugget of wisdom unto itself, which is pretty cool.
What's also notable is that Sauron being greedy for little treasures like and trinkets like that is obviously a nod to his old days as a Maiar, because he was pretty much a smith for the Valar overall.
Right, and the things that you can make with Mithril obviously are much finer and more wondrous than perhaps other substances. I will note, I didn't get the. Oh, what's that? Go for it.
Yeah, it's a nod to his days in service to Ale. We also have, from what I remember, I like how, I don't know if you got too much into it, but how they initially, what is it that Aragorn comments? How the wind howls. It is howling with wolf voices. The wargs have come west of the mountains. I like how it initially seems to some of the characters that the wind is howling, but it's Aragorn who realizes, almost too late that it's the wargs. I don't think he was expecting them to come over the mountains as they have. They're a little
right,
out of
and without riders as well. They didn't have orcs. Yeah. They seemed to be. We talked a little bit about the fact that it seemed like they were spectral, basically agents of Sauron.
Yeah, and it's no, the bad guys are never mentioned as having mithril, and
I will note that they mention in this, I think Gandalf says like the only place in the world for mithril is here in Moria, and I guess in one context that's true in Middle Earth, but I do believe I didn't get the quote on this. I failed, but I believe, if my memory serves, that mithril can be found or could be found at the time on Numenor. That there were other places on the planet where mithril could be found once upon a time. So Pippin tossed a stone to force the confrontation of the Maiar. And force the ascension of Gandalf. Good point. I see what you're saying, because I was talking about how tossing stones is both Boromir and Pippin toss stones that summon the attention of enemies in this chapter. But Thomas is pointing out it was for the greater good. It's for the greater good. The ascension of Gandalf.
Yeah, when Boromir did it, but when Pippin did it, he was just being an ass.
Get that Pippin some Ritalin.
Right. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Good point. He's got a little ADHD going on.
Yeah. What I found funny, where is it? I'm trying to find the page where Pippin behaves like a buffoon or a fool of a toque.
You're going to have to narrow it down.
The thing is,
I had to narrow it down.
But what I like is how you have Pippin was Aragorn just got finished talking to Merry about how one of you might have fallen in and still be wondering when you were going to strike the bottom. Let the guide go first while you have one. And you've got, once again, we've got Aragorn paired with Merry. It seems like Merry is Aragorn's favorite of the hobbits, alongside Frodo. But
okay. Yeah.
It's just he's always walking on ahead or somewhere in the group with Merry, because they're the two experienced ones. While Pippin just takes the rock, tosses it down the well. I just like how Gandalf just, freaks out and goes, "What's that?" And as though he didn't expect it and didn't know what just happened. Fool of a toque, throw yourself in next time, and then you will be no further nuisance. Now be quiet. And I like how even Gandalf talks down a little about the hobbits when he says right before the throw yourself in next time part,
This is a serious journey, not a hobbit walking party. And it's Gimli who notes rather grimly a few minutes later due to the responding noise, that was the sound of a hammer, where I've never heard one. And one thing that was neglected from the movies is how Gandalf does end up kind of apologizing to Pippin and pretty much tells him, get into a corner and have a sleep, my lad. You want to sleep, I expect. I cannot get a wink, so I may as well do the watching. And it, like, I understand what Jackson was actually going for with that scene. No, he does not have Gandalf apologize immediately. What Jackson's doing is building up towards the end where there's a great sense of relief at Pippin becoming Gandalf's favorite of the hobbits. But of these four, at least. While what Tolkien was going for was something that fits more with the novel. And it's a markedly different approach, but they're aiming for the same goal here with this character relationship. And I like how Gandalf, though, does show he does have a bit of an addiction when he says, I know what is the matter with me. I need smoke. I have not tasted it since the morning before the snowstorm. So part of his
Joe mentions here the other Joe. Of course, Gandalf lights a pipe in Moria. Isn't that almost as bad as dropping a stone in the well? Almost. It does make a light for sure. But yeah,
not that bright enough to attract too much attention.
Good call, though.
But
fool of a wizard, light yourself up next time. Love it.
Yeah.
Great call.
Yeah.
Of course, we also know that they're being tracked by Gollum this whole time, and Frodo is feeling that, can sense it. We don't get the reveal of that here, though, in this chapter. So anyway, continue, good sir.
Well, all I was going to mention is that this shows that it's not just Saruman who's addicted to pipeweed. You're
right.
Gandalf. He's addicted.
Been a connection to the Shire he's had, and I guess in some ways that Saruman as well, right? I mean, Saruman was getting the pipeweed shipped to him.
But
go ahead.
Although Saruman went and got himself even more addicted than Gandalf in far less time.
You were, noting the kind of surly relationship between Gandalf and Pippin.
Yeah.
There's another great little bit in this chapter where it's Boromir and Gandalf, where they're kind of pissy with each other, basically. So this is where it's revealed that Gandalf actually doesn't know the password to get in the door. And so
that part.
So it's like, but you do wait, but do you but do not you know the word, Gandalf? Asked Boromir in surprise. No, said the wizard. The others looked dismayed. Only Aragorn, who knew Gandalf well, remained silent and unmoved. Then what was the use of bringing us to this accursed spot? Cried Boromir, glancing back with a shudder at the dark water. You told us you had once passed through the mines. How could that be if you did not know how to enter? The answer to your first question, Boromir, said the wizard, is that I do not know the word yet, but we shall soon see. And, he added, with a glint in his eyes under his bristling brows, you may ask what is the use of my deeds when they are proved useless. As for your other question, do you doubt my tale? Or have you no wits left? I did not enter this way. I came from the east. But so there's the bickering in the fellowship is kind of fun to witness there. It's all's not, wine and roses. There's some, and it's a great point. I mean, I'm kind of siding with Boromir in this moment. Wait, what? We followed you. You're like, look, we got to go through Moria. We need to get underground. We need to get out of sight. This is a shortcut. I've been through here. Trust me here. I know where the door is. We can do this. Oh, by the way, I have no idea how to get in the door. I mean that's a big deal, right? Like, what?
Gandalf said the equivalent of, trust me, I know it like the back of my hand. Oh, wow, that's new.
Yeah,
Because
right.
basically he did. It's
Oh,
like-
yeah, you're right. Rohan, terrible idea. Let's go to the door where we don't know how to open it. Okay. Anyway. But,
Yeah,
yes.
Patty Bulger would never have made this mistake. Uh,
We brought that up actually. That yes, he would have ascertained the password immediately. They're like, oh, it's friend. I don't know why, guys. It's friend. Obviously, I do these puzzles at home, and yes, it's friend. I'm a safe cracker. He's got his ear up against the Star of Feanor. He's turning it. Click, 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 click. Oh, okay, it's open. But yeah, anyway, it's just those little bits there, that verbiage, you get these little squabbles. It does humanize these characters. It makes the Fellowship feel more like a group of people that have come together for a common purpose, but aren't all aligned in a lot of ways. You get situations where Gimli and Legolas have different opinions on Moria, and that kind of stuff. So it's really well crafted in that way. And it makes these characters come alive.
What we also get is, well, one other thing that makes it come alive is that at different moments, different characters agree or disagree with each other. You have, as you pointed out, Boromir and Gandalf clash here because Boromir is kind of starting to wonder if maybe Gandalf's lost his wits.
Yeah.
With good reason. And Gandalf's being snappish and snippy with him. But Gandalf, no, there's no excuse. Okay. Fair enough. But Gandalf
I don't know it yet. Okay. All right.
Well, you should have known it before we got here.
Yeah.
But you've got Gandalf and Gimli that seem to be on the same page for Moria. But Gimli just wants to go because he missed out on the chance for like 2 adventures.
Right.
So he's just wanting to do some catch up and reclaim his honor.
And he's hopeful that the dwarves, that Balin was successful. I mean, against all, all evidence to the contrary, the fact that they haven't reported back in forever, and it seems really oddly quiet around here. I mean, he's ignoring a lot of signs in the hopeful thought that, hey, they're just inside and they're just trying to stay quiet, and so he would love it if there was this dwarven kingdom had revitalized, and that he'd love to see that happen. You could certainly see his motivation.
What we need to bear in mind for Gimli is that hopeful is his middle name, basically, because he's, of all the dwarves that appear in the Silmarillion, The Hobbit, and Lord of the Rings, he is the most romantic. He's the most hopeful in nature and the most optimistic in some ways. The signs were all there, but he doesn't want to see it because, the idea of the dwarves reclaiming the ancient kingdom, Balin now being King Balin or something, is incredibly romantic, and it appeals to him for the same reason that Galadriel's beauty moves him. He's a romantic.
Great point.
He's going.
Mark is asking, Gimli should have known it passed down to the dwarves. No, Gimli certainly knows about the Balrog, and he knows about all of the goings on of the Moria being vacated. But he is still hopeful that in the last few years, when Balin led this group with a lot of folks that he knew personally, with Owen and some of the other members from the Hobbit, he's hopeful that group survived, even though they haven't heard back from them. So there's a disconnect there where they haven't gotten word either way. They haven't gotten word that, oh my God, everyone's dead, or did Gimli know about the door? I see what you're saying. Apparently not. I think he would have volunteered that information if he knew it. So great point though. Why wouldn't that necessarily be better knowledge? I suppose it's because the dwarves at the time were the ones that got wiped out, and so maybe there was everybody else that has come and gone since came through the eastern door and basically just gave up on the a good point. Although now that you mention this, good point, Mark. Because we do get the fact that the Watcher in the Water kills Owen during this, a Balin's attempt to retake. What that suggests is The door had to be open for Owen to encounter the Watcher, which would suggest that they knew how to open it. Now they could open the door from the inside. If you want to play it out in a way that could make sense for them, they just never closed the door while they were outside it. So they would, oh God, can't see. They just prop it open. But yeah, you could make the case that Balin's people theoretically would have known about opening the door because they opened it and then got attacked by the Watcher. But I thought Gimli knew Durin's Bane didn't know what it was. Okay. All right. Yep. That very well may be, Joe. I'd have to go back and check on that. Whether it's simply he knows the name and it's just a thing, or is there does he realize it's a giant, creature of fire? We will learn that in the next chapter for sure.
But spoilers alert, Balin dies.
Or does? Yeah, he does. Yeah, he's gone.
The thing is, though, that the Watcher is, I will admit, a monster that did give me the shivers when I first read the book at 26 years old.
Very evocative, yeah.
But let me see something.
We talked about the Watcher in the context of, it seems pretty obvious that it was in some ways, if not under Sauron's control, at least working in consort as a guardian of the gate for Sauron. Was kind of our thought. But yeah, what were you had some other thoughts there on the Watcher?
Well, no, all I was gonna say was that gave me the shivers way back when, and still does today.
Yep.
But then there's and that was actually one of my favorite.
Oh, I lost you, Joe. It was your favorite something. Oh, he kept us in suspense. I'm going to guess one of his favorite kind of H.P. Lovecraftian horrors from the Lord of the Rings. If you put those in context with the Balrog, with Shelob, other creatures of renown. But okay, well, I've pretty much gone through all of my notes. Sounds like Joe might be having some technical difficulties. Dan, any thoughts you have?
Well, I was going to also mention, because I have in my notes, Baruthiel got a mention.
Yes, I did. I went through Baruthiel. I did the quote. I explained how.
Darn, you missed it.
I know. Hey, that's why we're simpatico. We know the things that matter. But yes, the fact that that was one of the few things that Tolkien didn't have a backstory for, so we made a backstory, and I read out the backstory. So pretty cool.
It's one of the best backstories. And a lot of his lore, I do wonder if maybe at times he made up on the spot and then later backdated it.
Could be. Although I will give him credit for considering how many threads he has in play. There is a percentage-wise very small number of them that cross in weird ways. Like he thought it through. He thought it through in a lot of ways.
Yeah, what I mean is the Rohirrim, for example, came along gradually for the story. They weren't originally planned. But like what I'm wondering is there, but then, he melded them with the plot and whatnot and expanded and blew it up into something grander than what it previously was to an extent.
Okay. I think that's accurate.
The thing is, I'm wondering, when I say backdate, I mean like he comes up with an idea on the spur of the moment, writes it out. Well, actually, he types it out because he was using a typewriter. And then he realizes, oh, I just made reference to this. I don't have a plan for that. What the hell is that? Then goes and invents it and starts jotting together notes and putting it together and inventing more and whatnot. And then when he continues forward, he is continuing from the perspective of, whatever with it. And that this is what I mean when I say backdate. I mean, he writes it, maybe even writes a couple of the paragraphs into the story and then realizes, wait, hold on.
I need the backstory. Let me give the backstory. Yeah, I got you. He doesn't do the backstory first, then bring it up to the present day and stick it in the story. He writes it perhaps in the story and then fills in a backstory.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I wonder if he's doing that because I think he did that a few times, and he mentioned that the story kind of took him in different twists and directions he didn't expect, and he had to expand upon. Like Galadriel was one of these characters who just appeared, and he didn't have a backstory, and he had to work overtime.
Celeborn,
Celeborn as well.
Joe mentions the descriptive nature of the Watcher in the Water, the seething as if a host of snakes, a sinuous tentacle, pale green and luminous fingered end. Yeah, I was describing, I thought the description of when they're fighting the wolves and Gandalf basically casts essentially like an immolate spell, more or less, while Legolas is shooting an arrow and that the fire catches the arrow, and so when they find the arrowheads the next day, all the other arrows are intact, but there's one where the wood of the arrow has been burned off by the spell. I mean, all that stuff's really like the attention to detail on that is pretty awesome. Storytelling, high level, up there.
And
I think there's as Alexius pointed out, there's a strong connection between Lovecraft and Tolkien. With a bit of this, that you see here, because this is like a Lovecraftian monster.
The nameless things, yeah.
Yeah, and you also have the plunging into too much knowledge will inevitably bring sorrow and grief and madness as a idea.
I got you.
Yeah, although I would note that there's a lot of key fundamental differences between Tolkien and Lovecraft.
For sure. Oh, yeah. Boatload.
Although Lovecraft himself did have a kindly side, as seen with how he treated the Howard family. But the thing is, he was a lot less romantic in some ways, I think, and probably more, how do I put it? Pessimistic.
He's pessimistic, a little paranoid, and there was the theme. It was a lot. It was a lot more about worlds between worlds, and mortals accidentally encountering those things. We get some. I mean, that is certainly within the plot of Lord of the Rings, but it is not the main, I think, focus necessarily of that plot. Whereas I think it's the main focus of a lot of the H.P. Lovecraft short stories. But
yeah, but that being said, this is the nearest we get to Tolkien flirting with that kind of stuff, and I genuinely have to admit I'm quite fond of Tolkien's approach, a lot more than even Lovecraft's approach to it. Howard flirts with it a little, but I will admit I find that Howard's approach of the Lovecraftian stuff isn't as much fun as Tolkien's, because Tolkien is right there as a side thing. It's not like
I got you.
And it's just with Howard, it feels like he's kind of forced into it. He's like, well, okay, I guess I have to do it because I promised Lovecraft I'm going to do that for this story, and then I'm going to go to writing what I really want to write, which is this other story with a man-eating winged monkey, which is a thing. And
as you do,
and it's like, okay, it's just Howard has a lot of unknown, strange, and esoteric creatures, but the sci-fi, or maybe not sci-fi, but the kind of Cthulhu, Nameless Ones type stuff doesn't seem like, I don't know. I've always found a little bit of a weird thing that's in there that Howard was kind of forced to do.
I suppose there's a little bit of a, it's the same energy for Tolkien as which a couple of chapters which I would say are not necessarily Cthulhu-ish. You could make the argument, but I would say it's but the Tom Bombadil section. This is a look at a dangerous world, a world that is not really akin to humanity or culture or civility, and it's got this ancient energy to it. This is way before your time, person who's here, and the lore extends way beyond your knowledge, and so it's like it's table setting for this world building. So similarly here with Moria, you've got this idea of like, oh yes, below this earth there are these terrible things, and occasionally some of them come to the surface, and good luck if you ever have to encounter something that belches up from the depths to encounter you. So anyway, it's just like there's this giant world of which you're just this little part, and just stay between the lines, stay on the path, because if you veer off the path, things way beyond your reasoning and ability
Beyond
to deal
your
with,
ken.
or yes, beyond your ken, are there that could wipe you off the map, even without trying, maybe without even realizing it.
Yeah, and the fact that Gandalf himself is nervous, and
right.
This thing clearly wanted the One Ring, which shows it's not above the temptation. And I do think Sauron's probably more powerful than it, and that's why it wants the ring.
Farewell, Mark. And very true about yes, the Watcher would never have come out if Fredegar had been in the Fellowship.
Yep. And
it would have just been a boring trip to the door. Like, oh, okay, let's just go in, I guess. Yeah, we can leave, in fact. If it gets dangerous, why don't we just go back out? Bill will come with us. Come on, Bill. Let's go. All right. Oh, with all his Fredegar's there.
But the thing is, but anyways, yeah. I don't have too much more. Oh, right. There's also Gimli's song.
We talked about the song, but go for it, sir. Do your what bits of wisdom dost thou have to impart?
Not much, but there's mention of Durin, who
correct
is a repeating figure, I believe.
And we talked about Durin's crown and the fact that it's the 7 stars, and that the 7 stars is repeated in the elves and in humanity, the world of Gondor's flag, for instance.
And there's also, I believe, Durin the 7th, who's to come at the.
Good point. Got another 7 imagery there. Obviously, a powerful number to.
Yeah, and I've also been, powerful number. 7 in medieval times was a lucky number, but there's also that. I was basically forced. Well, maybe not forced is the right word, but talked into reading Oswald Spengler's The Decline of the West and into more cyclical history theories.
Okay.
As part of a project over on Substack alongside several other writers. And I was actually the last one to even touch this stuff, which they were very keen on, and they wanted my opinion, so I just read and reviewed. But the idea is that history is cyclical. It repeats and repeats and repeats over and over again. But the thing with Durin is that you get a bit of a cyclical nod. You have Durin the first, Durin the second, Durin and whatever. And each Durin comes at a key point in the dwarves' history, which is Tolkien's nod, I think, to the fact that history repeats. It may occasionally rhyme, but it always repeats. And the thing with Durin is that if there's multiple Durins, this is the same person. That means history is repeating, at least through him in a way, because he's the figure that reincarnates, that repeats, and whatnot. And it's a shame that we didn't get to see one of the Durins in Lord of the Rings or Silmarillion, as this is one of the most intriguing concepts and characters, I think, in the Legendarium.
And you do wonder, like, how much is, in universe legend versus how much of it is actual. Like, is it just that the dwarves have this way of saying, "Oh, Durin will come and name," or is it literally the spirit of Durin inhabits a young child and perhaps imparts its memories and its being unto another figure, and that figure then, or is it just simply like, hey, that's going to be our next leader. Why don't we call that one Durin the Fifth? Okay, got it. So it's interesting. You can analogize it both ways, I think.
And the thing is, I think that Durin, I like the idea that it's all the same person, but I also suspect that this might have been part of the inspiration as well for the various Zeldas with, the same link. It's the same guy just appearing in a different body every time. It's the same soul reincarnating. And I like to think that there was an idea borrowed from Tolkien in this regard, although with Zelda, they're also borrowing from Buddhist and philosophy, religiosity with how reincarnation works. But I do, if I remember, a lot of the developers of The Legend of Zelda, even as far back as the 90s, had read Lord of the Rings and whatnot, and some of the other stuff. So they were very nerdy men. So the thing is, like I said, I just have the sneaking suspicion Durin might have served as a kind of template for Link.
I got you. That makes sense.
It's just the mention of Durin intrigued me this time around when reading. And of course, there's the mighty kings in Nargothrond and Gondolin, who now beyond the western seas have passed away. And of course, we all know what Nargothrond and Gondolin are. And doubtless you went over it. But
I referenced Nargothrond in connection to Celebrimbor staying there and perhaps taking some of the first stage wisdom with him to Eregion. But yes,
he infringed on their copyright. But
he stole it. Yeah, got it. Okay, yeah.
But as to the world was fair in Durin's day, which Durin is my question.
Right. Okay. So, I got the idea that it was perhaps the original Durin the Deathless, but probably. Good point. It doesn't have to be.
Yeah, it's probably the first one, like you said. Although it could also be a dual thing where they're referencing multiple of the Durins.
Right. Or maybe the Durin, before the Balrog was released, they were at the height, the zenith. It was all was fair, and then in an instant, it wasn't.
Yeah, and I like that they also mentioned that unwearied then were Durin's folk. Durin's folk are the dwarves, but the fact that they consider themselves basically the children of Durin after a fashion shows the importance he has to them. He's something of a messianic figure in their eyes. And
good idea, good version of thing to term of art. Yes.
And then you have unwearied. The elves are constantly mentioned as being weary, as being tired, and Durin's folk are the dwarves seem like they still have quite a bit of vitality to them. But the idea of them being wearied as well is intriguing, and shows the dwarves are in retreat now. The age of men are upon us. So I really do like that little touch Tolkien threw in.
And we'll see an echo in the next chapter when eventually our heroes, I think Gimli in particular, looks into the mirror. Is going to see that crown of stars, which is a somewhat of it's like a sacred thing that doesn't. It's not everybody who. I think, in fact, someone who gaze into the pond don't see it, but to the right people, they see the constellation reflected as a crown above their heads. So. And give some thought to Gimli's later, leading the group to the glittering caves and starting his own realm.
Yeah, and the thing is, well, and there's also the entry into the tomb. I like how one of the characters mentions it's like a tomb. Yeah, because it is one. That's what I was thinking.
This is no mine. It is a tomb. Awesome, Sean Bean line. But yeah. Yeah, okay. Well, those are my thoughts. Okay, so next time, back on the Brothers channel, we're going to be discussing the vaunted Chapter 5, The Bridge of Khazad-dûm, the chapter that got this 12-year-old nerd hooked on Tolkien back in the day.
One of the coolest chapters.
That's it was. It's safe to say it's my favorite chapter in the trilogy. I think it's quality. Looking forward to savoring it with you guys on the next live stream.
Oh, I cannot wait.
What else can people find on the Brothers channels, good sirs?
Well, on Brothers Arda, we're basically just continuing a couple of analyses, podcasts of the Silmarillion, Hobbit, because we're converting my essays from Substack into a series of Hobbit videos. Awesome. And I've just finished, and I'll be posting tonight, my first analysis of the Lord of the Rings as an article over on Substack, but
wow,
I'm going to be turning that into a video soon. It's just a very long essay because I also analyzed the technique in the prose style and how Tolkien actually wrote this and what he's doing from a literary perspective.
Nice.
And also comparing him to Charles Dickens and Homer and how they approach storytelling in contrast in comparison to Tolkien. So that's going to be an upcoming video in a few weeks on Brothers Arda. But together with Dorklords, we're basically also producing for the Bros Crin channel a audio drama, which Matt has really done way
you guys are doing the work. I'm happy to assist in the narrating. So
your narration is perfect.
It wouldn't be as great as it is without your narration. I mean,
you're too kind. You're too kind. No, it's fun to do. I love the story. It's Crown of Blood. It's we're doing chapter 2 at the moment, which I believe was written by Dan. And it's quality. It's that historical fantasy, and it's really, really cool. So,
thank you.
I urge people to go check it out.
Thank you. And as for Dorklords, do remember to subscribe to that channel. What are you up to these days on Dorklords?
So, I mean, we're doing in the non-Tolkien world, we're covering a couple of different shows. We're covering Strange New Worlds. We're going to be probably covering Alien Earth. But as far as Tolkien stuff goes, I'm currently researching a pretty cool topic. It's the Tale of Adenel. And what that is, it's an in-universe legend about Morgoth's corruption of humanity. And it only appears in the notes section in Morgoth's Ring. So there's a little bit of an unreliable narrator quality to it. Like, oh, this is a legend in universe. Like, okay, does that mean it's real or not? But if you take it at face value, basically Iluvatar ends up shortening the lifespans of humans as punishment for worshiping Morgoth. It's really explosive, revelatory stuff. So I'm working on that for my next Tolkien
And
video.
it introduces also another character who's interesting and the equal of Sauron, but who's discarded by Tolkien as a character. Fangkill.
Good call. Exactly. So so there's a lot of anyway, there's a lot to take to mine out of that lore, and so that's what I'm working on at the moment. So yeah, a lot of stuff going on, and then of course next month, at the end of next month, we're back around to, is it Tolkien Reading Day? Yeah.
Yeah.
Am I wrong? Yeah. So that's
it's Hobbit Day, I think.
Oh, it's Hobbit Day. So we do a yeah, that's right, because it's we're talking Frodo and Bilbo's birthdays. So everybody tends to collaborate on a cool video for that as well. So I got to get busy on that. But yeah. So thank you everyone out there for joining us today. Really appreciate it. Many thanks to the brothers. And we'll see everybody next time. Bye.